Good evening. In the realm between consciousness and the unknown, sometimes we glimpse shadows of things yet to come. I still remember the dream with unsettling clarity. There I was, pressed against the cool window of an aircraft, the familiar rumble of its engines vibrating through the body as we accelerated down the runway. I was sitting in the left-hand window seat, my usual preference. It gave me a perfect view of the emerald patchwork of fields stretching beyond the tarmac. As we climbed into the sky, something caught my eye. Flames. Angry, roiling, vengeful flames trailing out behind the wing, dancing against the blue canvas of sky. The aircraft gradually banked left. At first gently, then steeper and steeper. An unnatural tilt that sent adrenaline surging through me. The green fields below weren't shrinking anymore, they were growing larger, rushing up to meet us with terrifying speed. My world became nothing but green, a green that promised finality, not life. And then I woke up. Heart pounding, sheets damp with sweat. 3 months later, Concorde Flight 4590 took off from Charles de Gaulle Airport. A left bank after takeoff, flames streaming from the wing, a final descent into the green fields of Dunne. Was it coincidence? Or something more? Something that J.W. Dunne, British philosopher and pioneer in the study of precognitive dreams, spent his life trying to understand. So welcome to tonight's exploration of the thin veil between now and then, between what we know and what we sense. Join Ed and I tonight, coming to you live from Glasgow and Brighton, where we'll be diving deep into the mysterious world of precognition and dreams, the remarkable theories of J.W. Dunne, and the question that haunts us all: can we truly glimpse the future while we sleep? We'll try and separate fact from fiction, evidence from imagination, and explore the possibilities that exist in the shadowlands of human consciousness. Good evening, Ed. How are you, my man? It's great to see you back.
Thank you, John. I'm doing really good, and I hope I wasn't too missed last week. But yeah, we all need a break sometimes, and I had a really good weekend with my friend. So yeah, it was good. Excellent. But it's nice to be back as well. I missed you guys.
Excellent. So apart from Old Man Ray moaning about the volume of the music, how is everything else, people? Is the sound okay? There wasn't a pre-record, mate. Brit, mate, I was live. I just did that. Oh, there we go. Put some lights on now. All good, says Julie. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to look at J.W. Dunne, and it was a guy that I didn't really know much about either, Ed. Somebody had mentioned him on Twitter, which is absolutely under attack just now. I suspect it's up and down like the proverbial Lady of the Night's panties, isn't it?
Yes. Well, just to add spice, but that's mainly because you only really find out what's going on in the world on Twitter now, because all the other social media networks, all the news, it's all so heavily controlled.
Yeah.
And they probably, I don't know, they might have. It looked to me technically like an issue with their API. So it could be an attack, it could be an internal screw up, it could be someone just, I don't know, press the wrong bloody button, unplug the wrong server.
Right. Okay. Let's dive into this guy Dunne then. What do you think? You want to kick off? Shall you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was absolutely fascinated by it when you suggested the show, because I mean, dreams just are fascinating. I mean, you can't really be human and have dreams without being a bit fascinated frightened. I don't know. They're like a window to the subconscious, and the subconscious doesn't really make very much sense.
Yeah.
But John William Dunne's theories about time and precognitive dreams represent one of the most intriguing intersections of personal experience, philosophy, and scientific speculation in the early 20th century. While his ideas never gained mainstream scientific acceptance, they continue to challenge our understanding of consciousness and temporality, offering provocative possibilities about the nature of reality that science still struggles to fully understand. And that's kind of what the show is all about. Now, so who was he? John William Dunne was born on December the 2nd, 1875, at the Curragh camp in County Kildare. I'm sorry,
Curragh.
Irish people, if I've
Curragh?
just...
How
Curragh?
would you pronounce that, Shalini? Curragh camp, County Kildare.
Yeah, there's probably a bit of rolling of R's going on. Anyway, so he's Irish, the eldest son of Sir John Hart Dunne and Julia Elizabeth Dunne. Though born in Ireland to an Irish father, Dunne spent most of his childhood and subsequent career in England. His early life was marked by adversity. A serious accident confined him to bed for several years during childhood, during which he developed a profound interest in philosophy. By age 9, he was already contemplating the nature of time, foreshadowing his later philosophical inquiries. You can imagine little 9-year-old John William Dunne sitting at his dinner table asking his parents all sorts of questions that you wouldn't expect to come out of a 9-year-old's mouth.
Kids do ask the most intriguing questions, though, don't they?
Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing quite like the mind of a child, especially when it's been correctly fertilized and watered and kind of, yeah, because some kids just spend the whole time in front of screens and they're never encouraged to think about bigger things, but their brains are absolutely capable of processing it.
I had a bit of a rant on Tuesday during the movie review about reading and how people don't anymore, and I think that itself is a big drawback for kids these days. You know, not reading because they have no imagination.
None.
You know, because everything is shown to them, they're not as creative as we were. They don't have these little stories in your head and
also the vocabulary with which to express yourself. I mean, if you look at the way kids are brought up now with the internet and social media and the schools, I mean, the schools seem to celebrate mediocrity, and everything's also electronic. That it's all videos. They're essentially just passively sitting there absorbing this information. And books aren't passive in a mental sense, because you have to start with, but your brain inevitably creates pictures of what you're reading in your head. And that to me is very, very active form of learning. And yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, anyway, sorry about that. I suppose I should actually mention that dream. I didn't make that up. I actually had that dream. And it was about, I don't know, what, 8 weeks, 9 weeks later, maybe 10, 12, that Concorde actually crashed. And I remember watching it on TV thinking, holy Toledo, Batman. That's almost exactly how I imagined it went down in my dream, except I was inside it, which was weird. Really weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, dreams are fascinating. I can't say that I've ever had something that I would think of as premonition in a dream, but I've had similar themes in my dreams right the way back to childhood.
Yeah.
And I think partially dreams are a way of the brain processing all of the stuff that it's input over the course of a day. But it's like if you have really stressful moments, or you're going through really stressful periods in your life, then that can actually mean that you have much more vivid, active, crazy kind of dreams as well. And I don't know. I mean, I'm fully prepared to believe that humans have abilities that extend beyond our five senses and beyond what modern science can explain. I mean, whether ESP, telepathy, spiritual sensitivity, people who somehow mediums that can reach other places. I mean, a friend of mine was telling me about a medium that she went to see a while back, and this person knew stuff that they could not possibly have known. There's no way they could have guessed it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way they could have inferred it. My friend, when they went to see them, was actually very careful not to wear anything or to try and minimize the number of clues that she was giving away. And I just think it's fascinating, and I think we're handicapped somehow.
Yeah, I think so. Right.
Anyway, right. So, yeah, no, you keep going.
Before becoming known for his theories on time and dreams, Dunne established himself as a pioneering aeronautical engineer. Now, he would be pioneering because this is early 1900s. So, following the family military tradition, he fought in the Second Boer War around the turn of the 20th century. After being invalided home with typhoid fever, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Wiltshire Regiment and returned to South Africa in 1902, only to fall ill again. His engineering brilliance emerged in the early 1900s when he began systematic studies of flight. Between 1902 and 1913, he designed revolutionary aircraft, including the Dunne-Huntington triplane in 1904 and various tailless, swept-wing stable aircraft. Unlike the Wright brothers, who focused on manoeuvrability, Dunne prioritised maximum stability, creating planes that could fly themselves on a straight course with locked controls. His contributions to aeronautical engineering were significant enough to earn him fellowship in the Royal Aeronautical Society. Pretty good. And then in 1924...
But he's certainly a very smart guy.
Yeah, Dunne authored the book on fly fishing.
as you do.
As you would. Demonstrating his diverse interests. However, it was his 1927 publication, An Experiment with Time, that would bring him lasting recognition and establish his reputation as a unique philosophical thinker. Oh, pardon me.
So now we get to his experiments and theory of time. The first one is dreams of the future. The catalyst for his theories came from his own experiences with what he believed were precognitive dreams. He began keeping careful records of his dreams and noticed that some seemed to anticipate future events. In An Experiment with Time, he provides detailed accounts of these experiences, many of which he personally encountered. One significant pattern Dunne observed was that these precognitive visions typically foresaw future personal experiences rather than general events. This observation became central to his theory. These weren't arbitrary glimpses of global futures, but specifically related to the dreamer's own timeline. After publishing his findings, Dunne encouraged others to conduct similar experiments, recording their dreams upon waking and later comparing them with subsequent events. Through his collective experimentation, he became convinced that dream precognition, while uncommon, represented a normal human faculty rather than a supernatural anomaly. Which is fascinating, because if you go back into the days before internet and all the communication, and humans were living in much smaller communities, people were much more connected both to themselves and to some extent the world around them. I mean, even if you just look at the night sky, for example, we see a very different night sky than our ancestors did. And you can still see what they saw in a lot of parts of the world, just nowhere developed, and certainly not really in Europe in the same way.
Why does Ed sound like he's coming from the bottom of a barrel? I don't know, Fluffy.
Do I sound like I'm coming from the bottom of a barrel?
You sound a little deeper than you normally do. I would give you that. But I don't think that's anything I've done.
I'm more coming from the bottom of a glass of wine.
Maybe let me see. Hold on, let me have
I didn't close my door, which I normally do. So maybe that's it.
What's that behind you? Looking through the doorway.
Well, I don't know.
I'm kidding. There's nothing there.
I know I can see because I've got a camera pointing behind me.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't know. Let's just carry on. Is it bad or is it acceptable, Fluffy? Is it acceptable barrel speaking or is it really bad?
If it's too annoying, then I can always get up and close that door, see if that makes a difference. But since I had the flat done, I've now got a wooden floor, so it does echo a little bit more.
Tombra. Yeah, right. Okay, let's carry on. So Dunne's theory of time, to explain these experiences, Dunne developed a complex theory about the nature of time that he called serialism. Central to this theory was the rejection of linear time as we conveniently understand it. Dunne proposed that past, present, and future all exist simultaneously, with our ordinary waking consciousness simply moving through this predetermined landscape. Now, I've done a lot of looking into time and things like that because, I do like the odd bit of physics. And who was it? Was it Brian Greene or someone described time as like a sliced loaf? And each slice would be a point in time. And if you say you're 3 slices in, all the slices in front of you are the future. The slices behind you are the past. The present is the slice you're on. But they're all there. And technically you should be able to travel up and down the loaf. The future and the past should exist. But this contradicts with my own personal theory of time, because remember I come up with time's like a wave running through the universe in effect, in that time we're riding the crest of the wave, which is the present, and really there is no future because the future hasn't happened.
Well, the only thing that we really know is the present. The only moment that exists is the present. And I mean, I struggle with time travel in the sense of particularly going forward in time, because those events haven't happened. And one small change that you make in the present can potentially have a dramatically massive impact on what happens in the future. And until that future happens, there's a limitless possible number of different futures which you could end up experiencing based on your choices in the present moment.
Yeah.
Now, going back in time, because those events have already happened, one could potentially do that, but then you run into problems like the grandfather paradox, which is where you go back in time and you do something to interfere with your own birth.
But
I don't know.
Does the universe stop you doing that?
I think it must do. I think that there has to be some sort of fail-safe, because if it was possible to travel forward and backwards in time, the amount of damage you could do, because you can go back, if you went back in time, you can change the future.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can create other possibilities of the future. And I think it's a fascinating concept. and it makes for a great science fiction story, or a movie with Marty McFly and a DeLorean, which is so full of temporal holes that let's just not go there.
Yeah.
But it's
Or even worse,
I personally,
the butterfly
I
effect.
mean, maybe I'm completely wrong, but I just, it feels like the universe would have some sort of safeguards in place. There'd be something to prevent you from breaking things.
Okay, shall we move on? In Dunne's view, the now moment that we experience isn't adequately described by conventional science. He suggested that physical time is a fourth dimension, but this alone was insufficient to explain our conscious experience of moving through time. This led him to propose an endless sequence of higher dimensions of time, each needed to measure passage through the dimension below, with corresponding higher levels of consciousness. At the end of this chain, he postulated a supreme ultimate observer, a concept with theological implications. Dunne described this structure as a regress where every term except the first is defined by its relation to the preceding and following terms, producing an infinite series. He argued that this regressive nature of time is adapted to our reasoning powers precisely because we are self-conscious beings, and self-consciousness itself is inherently regressive. According to Dunne, our wakeful attention normally restricts us to perceiving only the present moment. However, when dreaming, this attentional barrier fades, allowing access to more of our timeline, both past and the future. This explains why fragments of future events can appear in dreams, typically mixed with fragments of memory. Other phenomena like déjà vu and potentially the existence of life after death were also explained through this framework. He did elaborate on these ideas in subsequent works, including The Serial Universe in 1934, The New Immortality in 1938, Nothing Dies in 1940, and, strangely enough, posthumously, in Intrusions 1955.
I mean, he sounds like an absolutely fascinating chap.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his ideas about, the thing is that if your conscious mind is aware on some level of everything that's happened, then it might be able to postulate future events based on decisions that you've already made. You just don't know that you've made them because they've been made in the subconscious, or because they're literally the only decision that you could make based on the circumstances or whatever it is. But that doesn't explain things like your Concorde dream, because you were never on the Concorde.
No, it doesn't.
Now, if you were a Concorde pilot, for example, that had a dream about Concorde exploding, then
you'd be called in for questioning.
Yeah, pretty much. So let's look at some scientific responses and alternative explanations.
Yeah.
Dunne's theories, while philosophically intriguing, encountered significant skepticism from the scientific community. Scientists such as Paul Davies have noted that there's no scientific evidence for more than one time dimension, and that Dunne's argument appears ad hoc, designed specifically to support his precognitive experiences rather than emerging from empirical observation. Now, scientists do my head in sometimes, because they say, oh, there's no scientific evidence to support more than one time dimension.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you have these scientific gatekeepers. It's like the archaeologists that say, oh, there's no evidence to support the theories of an ancient civilization. But they just conveniently ignore things that actually disprove their theories.
Could I throw a spanner in the works?
Yeah, go on.
There's no real evidence to prove that there is even one time dimension.
What is a dimension?
Exactly.
Exactly. And if you think about our lives as humans, each of us has our own version of the world in our heads. Your version of reality is very different from my version of reality. And every person in the chat, everyone listening to this, will have a different version of the universe in their heads. And so theoretically, we all exist in our own dimension, because you don't share those realities. It's like when you look at the world, you do so through your eyes. When I look at the world, I do so through my eyes. And what's going on in our brains, the interpretation of those things, it's like, from being a policeman, that when you're interviewing witnesses for a crime, quite often 5 different people can describe the same person in completely different ways.
Oh yeah, they will, and they will describe a car crash in a multitude of different ways. And if you're not careful when you're questioning people, you can make them say things that never happened quite easily, very easily. When the cars smashed into each other, was there a lot of glass on the ground? And people would go, yeah, there was, and yet none of the windows were broken. There was no broken glass. That kind of thing. It's very easy to lead people, and their memory is completely fallible and malleable. And this is the thing. I think we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, Ed, on All In. This is the thing where I find it quite disturbing when people call up past crimes against themselves that are like 20, 30 years old, because your mind has been mulling that over for so long that what you think happened probably bears no relation to what actually happened. I mean, men out there, you'll say something perfectly innocently, and a woman will take a slight at it, and you're like, what did I say? Yeah. And
I think every guy listening to you has probably been in there.
Yeah. But it's like the brain is a weird thing, and as you said, Ed, everybody constructs their own reality in their actual head, don't they? Because what you see and the words we use for common terms are just there by convention. I mean, my blue will not be the same as yours. We just know that the shade I'm looking at is a kind of blue, but it might look completely different to you.
Absolutely, and some people are colorblind. Some people see colors differently, or they can't see certain colors. Going back to Dunne, it is worth noting that he was revealed to be a spiritualist and medium, which obviously complicated the scientific reception of his work. And his theories extended beyond empirical science into metaphysical realms that were difficult to test using conventional scientific methods. Modern sleep and dream researchers have proposed several alternative explanations for experiences that seem like precognitive dreams. And I don't know. Yes, you have to have a rigorous scientific method, but I think scientists close themselves off to ideas which don't fit within their box. And I don't necessarily think that a purely empirical method of reasoning is necessarily adequate to describe the world that we live in, because some things can't be quantified. I mean, how do you quantify the beauty of a rose, or the feeling of falling in love, or something like that? It all happens to all of us. But if you tried to scientifically quantify being in love, you couldn't do it, because everybody's experience of it is different. So yeah, why don't we look at some of what the modern sleep and dream researchers have proposed?
Yeah.
Are you going to do that, or?
Yeah. So people tend to remember dreams that appear to have predicted events significantly more often than dreams that didn't. Yeah, okay. Maybe. But this guy, Dunne, you got to remember, Dunne, he kept a journal and he wrote everything down, whether he predicted an event or not. So I don't think you can accuse him of doing that. He was quite methodical and scientific in his approach to it. And this creates, according to the researchers, this creates a confirmation bias. Yeah, okay. But I can only think of one dream where I've had a precognition that something was going to happen, and it was that Concorde dream. And I can't think of any reason for me to have had that dream. You know, I'm not frightened of flying. I don't think I had a flight coming up. I've never been in a plane crash. So I don't understand why I would have that dream, particularly exactly the way that Concorde crashed.
What if
quite weird?
But I mean, what if an event like Concorde crashing and the subsequent impact it has on human consciousness, because that was one of those events that it's not just impacted the people who were actually on the plane or witnessed it, but it reverberated around the world. Now, when an event has power like that, is it possible that there's an echo of it that goes into the past and into the future somehow that
I don't know. I mean,
our brains might pick up on? I'm just spitballing. I'm not saying that's what happens. I just think it's why would you suddenly?
Yeah. If anything was going, if any kind of incident was going to trigger that, it would be something like a 911, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there might be people out there that had precognitions about 911 disaster happening. It's a weird one.
Absolutely.
And does this lead us into a little bit of like Rupert Sheldrake's morphic resonance?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating because I mean, it's not something that you can study empirically. It's, I guess, you have to sort of have a feel for it intuitively. But I mean, if we're looking at the scientific interpretation of what Dunne was doing, he was never, or it didn't sound to me like he was setting out to predict the future. He set out to record his dreams, and then when things happen, he would review his dreams to see if he dreamt about it. So it's not, I don't know. I think it's as scientific a method as you can for trying to understand dreams, certainly. Because if you're just recording them and then using that as a reference when events happen. So,
moving on, some individuals interpret ambiguous dream imagery as positive or predictive. This psychological trait, tolerance for ambiguity, makes certain people more likely to perceive connections between dreams and subsequent events, even when those connections are tenuous. Now, I suppose I did have this recurring dream when I was a kid growing up, and it was this, I was walking through this massive spaceship, very like the one on LV 749 or whatever it was, an Alien, right? You know, where the space jockey was sitting in his, the giant space jockey was sitting in his chair. And that was the kind of one, I had that dream all the time, right? I had it for months on end. Before the movie came out, I'd never seen the movie before when I had that dream, which was really weird.
That is very weird because it was a unique movie.
Yeah,
it's not the kind of it's not the sort of thing that your brain would be able to invent if it hadn't somehow seen it. I think.
I know.
I don't know.
The weird one.
So paranormal beliefs. Researchers found significant relationships between belief in the paranormal, belief in precognitive dreams, and the ability to make associations among unrelated events. Those predisposed to seeing patterns and connections may naturally interpret coincidences as precognition.
Is Fluffy still there? I just want to try something, sorry. Fluffy Columbus, are you still there? Because she was talking about the sounding like you were in a barrel.
Right.
You keep talking just now. I just want to try something. Keep going.
Okay, so with billions of people dreaming multiple dreams each night, the mathematical probability of some dreams matching future events is actually quite high. Many precognitive experiences may simply be coincidences that are given significance after the fact. That one's yes, maybe, but if we look at John's Concorde dream, it seems pretty out there to have a dream about Concorde going down in flames and then to have it actually happen not that long after you've had the dream. I mean, if you've been watching a movie about plane crashes, I mean, it's a film, I think it's called Concorde or Airport 80 or something, one of those airport movies in the 80s with a Concorde that ran into problems. And so, I mean, if you've just been watching that movie and then you have a dream about Concorde crashing, then okay, fair enough. But if it just comes out of the blue, then I don't know. I mean, it could be complete coincidence, but it's interesting to speculate as to whether it is or not.
Yeah.
And dreams often process our memories and emotions. Events we experience during the day, concerns we have, or information we've unconsciously absorbed may manifest in dreams that later seem predictive when similar scenarios unfold, which is possible.
It does indeed.
I mean, it could be that our brains are running through scenarios of potential futures and things that might happen in order to somehow allow us to prepare ourselves a bit mentally for the possibility that it might happen. And perhaps that seeps into dreams. I don't know. So do you want to continue, or do you want to
no, you
spend more time
continue for a couple.
mucking with the sound?
Continue for a couple.
Okay, so despite these alternative explanations, science faces genuine limitations when addressing phenomena like those Dunne described. The fundamentally private nature of dreams poses a significant challenge to scientific investigation. While brain activity during REM sleep can be measured, the content of dreams remains accessible only through subjective reporting. This creates an epistemological gap that science struggles to bridge. Well, enter stage left Elon Musk with his Neuralink, and maybe I don't even want even if I could do that, I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want someone watching my dreams. Hell no.
Oh, good God, no.
But I think there is such a thing as too much science and too much knowledge, and I don't think that it would be a bit like mind reading, and I think our minds it's the last refuge of privacy that we have. And I don't know about you, but I have crazy shit in my head sometimes. I don't want anyone else kind of cottoning on to that.
I mean, I have to restrain myself on a minute by minute basis.
Mm-hmm.
If I told people some of the things that I maybe would like to happen, then they'd be like.
But I don't. To be honest, John, I don't think that's unusual.
Yeah,
I think we all have that, and it's. I think the people who are happiest in life, they're the ones who don't judge that internal shit too much. Mm-hmm. Because thinking of saying something is not the same as actually saying it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it also taps into the nature of consciousness.
It doesn't.
Which remains obviously one of science's great unsolved mysteries. How subjective experiences emerge from brain activity, the hard problem of consciousness as it's known, continues to elude scientific explanation. Dunne's theories touch on this frontier, suggesting that consciousness may have properties that extend beyond our current understanding of physical reality. I agree with that completely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and I think we're still not proving that consciousness comes from the brain. I mean, my own personal kind of thing, the way I look at consciousness is that we're receiving it from an external source.
I agree.
You know,
It's like it's the whole light on the wall. If you see a light on the wall and you don't know that it's coming from a lamp, you would think that the light is coming from the wall,
yeah,
but it's not. It's being projected onto the wall from somewhere else. You're just not aware of that somewhere else. And my personal feeling is that consciousness is very much like that. I mean, there's even theories about DNA that it's some kind of antenna,
Mhm.
and it's that aspect of our physical form which channels the consciousness into our bodies, and then when we die, that consciousness goes back to wherever the light source is. And I can't claim to have any definitive answers, but that's long been, well, put it this way: when I first heard that theory in my favorite sci-fi show, it really resonated with me.
Mm-hmm. What was your favorite sci-fi show?
Babylon 5.
Oh yeah,
There's so much good philosophy in that
I
show.
know. I still haven't got past the first couple of episodes.
Yeah, the problem is, I would suggest start with season 2,
Okay.
because if you do that, I mean, that was where I started. I think I actually started about halfway through season 2, and the characters are all much more comfortable with each other. The scripting is a bit better. It's all kind of a bit more solid, but then it starts raising questions that make you want to go back and watch the
Right.
first season, because there's things happening that are flashbacks of what's happened in the first season, and you kind of want to understand that, so you're more motivated to watch it.
Yeah. No, that sounds reasonable. Give that a shot. So, temporal experiences versus physical time. Scientific models of time as a dimension in physics don't fully account for our subjective experience of temporal passage. The persistent sense that there is a now that moves from past to future, what philosophers call the arrow of time, remains incompletely integrated with physics. Dunne's focus on this experiential aspect of time highlights a genuine area where scientific models remain incomplete. Yeah, I think, well, I have to agree with Dunne here, because there's no concept of what time is, really.
No.
You know, and
Absolutely. And also what it says about the passage of time, something that so many people that I know have said, that they feel like time is speeded up.
yeah.
And
Well, it seems
initially I thought it's because I'm getting older, but then when I posed the question on Twitter a while back, one of my followers actually commented that their 12-year-old had said the same thing to them.
Yeah.
So what controls? Because I mean, it's a scientific fact that the Earth is spinning slightly faster on its axis, but it's like,
Yeah.
in real terms, it's microscopic. It's not. I mean, it's hardly even something that you would notice, but somehow, pretty much everybody I know feels like time is moving faster now than it used to. So what controls that? Well, I mean, because we measure time by the Earth going around its own axis, and the Earth going around the sun and the moon and all of that stuff. So we have days, weeks, months, seconds, minutes. We have atomic clocks that all computers and mobile phones sync their time to time servers, and the time servers get their time from atomic clocks.
Mhm.
And that's running at the same speed. So it's not like someone's actually speeded up time, but our perception of time, how it's like when you're, I mean, when I was a kid, my parents used to take us out to Siavonga on Lake Kariba, and it's about a 2.5 hour drive. And when I was sort of 7 or 8, it felt like a week.
Yeah.
It was, but then when we went to Holland and we would have a similar drive, it never felt like it took so long because there was a lot more going on. I mean, if you drive from Lusaka to Siavonga, there ain't much there apart from bush, and the bush all looks the bloody same. Whereas if you do a drive like that for that distance, somewhere like Holland or England, the countryside around you changes quite dramatically over the course of a couple of hours. Now, does that impact on our sense of time? Because now, for me, 2 hours just goes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. It's one of the reasons I was really interested to cover Dunne in a show, because it raises so many really interesting philosophical questions about just the nature of existence and the passage of time and the sort of passage of our existence. So where were we?
The challenge of testability.
Right, yes. So perhaps most significantly, claims of precognition are difficult to test under controlled conditions. The rarity and unpredictability of seemingly precognitive experiences makes them resistant to traditional experimental design. While researchers can study dream reports from large populations, definitively proving or disproving precognition may remain beyond scientific methodology's reach. Which I don't think that's such a bad thing. I'm not sure that I'm not convinced that we're supposed to be able to understand everything. I think that the universe likes its mysteries. And there is such a thing as too much information, because it would take away some of the mystery in life.
Yeah.
Do you want to do the next bit?
Yeah, okay. Despite, or perhaps because of these scientific limitations, Dunne's ideas have had considerable cultural influence, particularly in literary circles. His concepts of time and infinity influenced prominent authors including George-Louis Borges and Fian O'Brien. Fian? How do you pronounce that? That's an Irish name, isn't it? F-I-A.
I thought it said Flan.
No, it's not Flan. Is it Fian? Yeah, I think. Is it? I'm not sure. Whose novel The Third Policeman?
L?
Who cares? Who The Third Policeman reflects Dunnian themes. Notable British playwright J.B. Priestley was also attracted to Dunne's view on time and immortality. Contemporary paranormal writer Anthony Peake has attempted to update and revitalise Dunne's ideals for modern audiences, demonstrating their continued resonance. This ongoing interest suggests that Dunne touched on profound questions about human experience that transcend the boundaries of conventional science. Dunne's application of his temporal theories to the problems of relativity and quantum theory also demonstrate his ability, or his attempt, to connect his philosophical insights with the emerging physics of his era. While his specific interpretations were not adopted by mainstream physics, the questions he raised about the nature of time continue to be relevant in contemporary physics and philosophy of science. Well, I think they very much do. Yeah. Have you ever read or listened to any Anthony Peake stuff? It's quite interesting.
No, I haven't. I'll. You've piqued my curiosity now, because, and I think I love questions like this. The questions that there are no answers for, but at the same time, you still have the question. You can still throw the question around and try and understand it on as many different levels as you can. And I think sometimes intuitively we kind of understand what the answers are. That's the thing. And this is where the whole notion of consciousness not emanating from inside our bodies, but from somewhere else, that somehow do different consciousnesses share something? I don't know. Is there one source of consciousness for all of us,
I don't know.
or multiple sources of consciousness? It's absolutely fascinating. It really is. And I think just because science doesn't have an explanation for it doesn't mean to say that these aren't valid questions.
Oh no, I think these are very valid questions. I think sometimes science blinds itself when it gets too much into experimental physics and trying to prove things with mathematics, because to be honest, you can pretty much prove anything you like with mathematics if you make it so convoluted that almost nobody can understand it, or even not. But you can really you can really prove almost anything with mathematics. That doesn't make it so, because mathematics itself is a construct, doesn't it?
Absolutely, but and I think that science spends too much time assuming that everything that science knows is everything there is to know, if that makes sense.
No, it doesn't.
That I mean, maybe in 100 years or 500 years or something, we'll discover that there are different types of energy that we weren't even aware of now.
Yeah.
Which and all of this stuff comes into play, and it might be that there are, in fact, I'm sure there are scientific discoveries coming down the line which might make more sense of some of these questions that we're asking.
Well, it's like Matthew says there, dark matter proves my point. They made it up to fix a math problem, and they did, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Same with the Big Bang. I mean, the Big Bang to me is just religion disguised as science.
Well, of course it is. I mean, it was using the Jesuit priest that came up with the theory, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and it's we lock ourselves into some of these baseline assumptions, and then that precludes a whole entire field of stuff that we just don't consider because it goes against dogma.
Yeah.
Right. So, conclusion. J.W. Dunne occupies a fascinating position in intellectual history. An aeronautical engineer whose rational and fly fisherman, whose rational, analytical mind led him to explore the irrationality and seemingly supernatural realm of precognitive dreams. His work exemplifies both the power and limitations of attempting to systematize subjective experience. The scientific community has developed plausible psychological explanations for seemingly precognitive dreams, yet these explanations do not definitively close the case. The subjective nature of consciousness, the mysterious qualities of dream experiences, and the philosophical puzzle of time's passage remain areas where science continues to evolve, or not in some cases. Perhaps Dunne's greatest contribution was not providing final answers, but asking profound questions that span the boundaries between empirical science, philosophy, and human experience. His work reminds us that some of the most fundamental aspects of our existence, our sense of time, our consciousness, our dreams, continue to resist complete scientific explanation, remaining fertile ground for both rational inquiry and philosophical wonder. Excuse me, John, can you do that last bit, please?
Yeah. In an age of increasing scientific specialization, Dunne's bold interdisciplinary approach serves as a reminder that some of humanity's most interesting questions lie at the intersection of different domains of knowledge, neither fully explicable through pure science, nor best approached through pure speculation, but requiring the kind of creative synthesis that characterized Dunne's remarkable mind.
I think I'm going to have to go and find some of his books and read them, because I mean, apart from the fact that he really sounds like someone I'd love to have dinner and joints and wine with.
Yeah.
Just pass a pipe around, and and he's a smoker because everybody in that day and age smoked. So, but and when we mentioned the fly fishing book, it's kind of left field. But my stepdad and his twin brother were fly fishermen when they were younger. And one of the I could understand how Dunne might be interested in something like fly fishing because it gets you out and away from the world. But then there's a lot of fly fishermen make their own lures. And there's something quite, what's the word? Something quite peaceful about sitting at a workbench and doing something practical with your hands. And at the same time, having this brain that's massively active as well.
Yeah, and then there's always the standing on the bank of the river, not catching anything for hours at a time. Gives you plenty of time to think, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, for sure.
I used to do a lot of fishing growing up. I used to do a lot of spinning. And it's very therapeutic, I think.
Teaches you patience.
Yeah.
And there's something, we used to fish in Zambia when we'd fly out for the summers to see my dad. Although I have to say fishing on Lake Tanganyika is good fishing because you actually catch fish. Assuming you've got a half decent boatman who kind of knows where the fish are. But it's peaceful. There's something, I don't know. I don't know what it is about fishing, but there's something about it that is very relaxing, and it gives your brain a chance to wander off a bit, which is kind of what you have to do when you're thinking about dreams and consciousness and all of these other things. But it is also equally fascinating that an aerospace engineer, which is arguably one of the more hardcore scientific kind of things, would be interested in this stuff. To me, it shows a well-balanced mind.
So some of Dunne's actual dreams. So in 1902, he dreamed of reading a newspaper report about the catastrophic eruption of Mount Pelée on Martinique. The volcanic explosion subsequently occurred on May the 8th, 1902, killing approximately 30,000 people. His dream didn't focus not just on the disaster, but on his personal experience of reading about it, a subtle distinction that would become central to his theory that precognitive visions relate specifically to the dreamer's future sensory experiences rather than external events. Well, that doesn't compute with my dream, does it? Because I was in the plane looking out, and there's no sensory experience there, I hope. Unless it's yet to come.
Well, but that may be because there were people on that plane when it went up. Now, here's a left field idea that when it's something that I noticed when my partner died in 2001, that at the moment of death, there's some kind of energy transfer that happens. I can't describe it beyond that, but I experienced it.
Did you see that thing
myself.
I sent
you? Which one?
Oh, I sent you a link, and it's they have found that there is an emission of light. I don't like the term.
Oh yes,
emission.
I did see that.
I don't like the term emission because I don't think light's an emission. I think it's a perturbation of a medium, right? So, but
now
I'll just start ranting about photons and how they don't exist.
Well, let me just finish the theory, because given that something like a plane crash, dying in a really sudden, frightening way, must be there must be this explosion of energy. Now, what if that is if all of our consciousness comes from one central source, then perhaps that resonance of that event somehow filters through, and that's where your dream came from. Perhaps your dream was maybe an echo, or it's like a blast wave from an explosion. And maybe that ripples out not through time, but through consciousness. And that somehow our consciousnesses are linked in some way that we don't understand. And so when something like that happens, it's possible that not everybody, but somehow maybe some people are more sensitive to it, or I don't know. Just, it's a very, very interesting topic of conversation.
Indeed. In 1904, while staying at the Hotel Scholastica in Austria, Dunne experienced a dream that seemed to preview a Parisian disaster. He vividly saw a factory fire with distinctive details like twisted iron girdles and trapped victims. Several days later, a newspaper account of a rubber factory fire near Paris matched these specifics with uncanny precision, down to the structural collapse patterns and the human casualties. This case demonstrated the potential for dream content to mirror future news reports with photographic accuracy.
That's bloody fascinating. I mean, how does that work if not some sort of ripple through consciousness?
Yeah, I think you might be on something there. I think you might be on something, Ed. I like that idea, a ripple through consciousness.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's...
Yeah, because if you think about it, all those people going back to the central consciousness or into the pot or whatever, even if it's not a central consciousness, it's still a disturbance in the force. And that then...
It's a good way of describing it.
Comes down the timeline. It's possible, yeah.
But like I said before, I'm not sure it's time. I don't...
Well, when I say time, I mean comes down the transmission line, you know?
Yeah. But it also, because it I don't know, it's just that ripple effect. Now, does the ripple, and the interesting question is, does that ripple extend into the future as well as the past? Or just the past? It's, who knows?
It's hard. These are not easy questions.
Well, it's only hard if you are insistent on trying to come up with an answer instead of tossing the question around. Because sometimes, I mean, to start with, I don't think some questions are made to be answered. It's like what happens after death. I don't think we're supposed to know the answer to that question until we actually die.
Yeah.
And it's actually another, it's something that's covered in one of the episodes of Babylon 5, because in that timeline,
you should do a course. You should do a self-help group.
You could actually. I've had to. I mean, that TV show got me through some of the darkest moments in my life, including that time I mentioned in 2001.
Yeah.
But there's one episode where one of the telepaths is in someone's mind when they die. And that's and it's...
Is that dangerous?
I mean,
is that like a vampire still drinking when the heart stops?
Well, the way it's described is that at that moment of death, your mind perceives it as a door because it doesn't have any other way to interpret it. And then that person who's dying disappears through that door. And for a brief moment of time, the person who's in their mind gets pulled in and they have to kind of pull back. But you're never the same again afterwards because the little part of you goes off. And then there's one super evil telepath, and the theory is that he did that too many times because he was too interested in what was going on, and the kind of best bit of him ended up leaving. And yeah,
so he just got little bits pulled off him until he just became a generally bad egg.
Yeah, and he's actually played by Chekhov. What's his face? The guy who played Chekhov in Star Trek.
Yeah, I know who you mean. Can't remember his name.
No, me neither.
Sorry?
Oh, no, I feel bad that I can't remember his name. I've got to find out. Hang on, let me just ask Grok quickly.
So 1912, Dunne had an aviation-related dream that proved particularly personal. As an accomplished aeronautical engineer, he dreamed of watching a monoplane crash on a field near Oxford, with the pilot miraculously surviving. The following morning, he learned his friend, a skilled aviator, had indeed crashed under identical circumstances at the precise time of his dream. The pilot walked away unharmed, mirroring the dream's outcome, and the incident highlighted the potential for precognitive dreams to involve familiar individuals and locations.
That would again suggest some kind of ripple in consciousness, because it doesn't have to be because someone died, but something really stressful, like super, super stressful, like nearly dying. Maybe that has a similar effect.
Yeah. 1913, Dunne dreamed of a catastrophic...
Oh, it was Walter Koenig that...
Walter Koenig, that's it, yeah. What was it? 1913, Dunne dreamed of a catastrophic train derailment. 6 months later, on April the 14th, 1914, the Flying Scotsman mail train jumped the tracks at Prestonpans, Scotland, matching the dream's specific imagery of carriages tumbling down an embankment. The temporal gap between dream and event, combined with the precise visual correspondence, suggested a non-linear relationship between perception and reality.
And again, one of the themes about these so-called precognitive dreams is that they all seem to cover moments of extreme emotional intensity. Fear, death, accidents, like a train smashing off a line and carriages tumbling down a hill. They're stress-inducing events, and perhaps it's that which sparks off this ripple, and perhaps this happens a lot more frequently than we realize, because I don't know about you, but I don't generally remember most of my dreams. But you still dream, and so maybe your brain is picking up on these things and it's somehow filtering them out.
Yeah.
And maybe you could teach it like Dunne did by writing your dreams and pulling dreams into the conscious mind. Maybe you can be more aware of it. I mean, it's something that it doesn't seem, he didn't seem to think it was some sort of superpower that he had.
Yeah, he thought it was natural.
It was, and so if we all have that maybe because our brains are really good at protecting themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we all dream to a certain extent. I think those that say they don't dream just don't remember them. I only know two people that say they don't dream. One of them's Ben, who I can't believe doesn't dream because he is such a narcissist. And the other one's Starmer, who I can't believe doesn't dream because he is such an... In fact, there are quite a few similarities between Ben and Starmer, aren't there?
Possibly not go there.
Possibly not.
But I mean, the simple fact of the matter is that we all dream. If you don't remember your dreams, it doesn't mean to say you don't dream, because dreams are an essential part of how our brain works. And without dreams, it's like if you have people who stay awake for long periods of time, and your brain, you start to lose your mind if you don't get the sleep that you need for your body to repair and your brain to sort itself out. And I think part of what happens when we're asleep is that our brain is essentially filing away things into our subconscious.
See, the thing about sleep is it doesn't give the brain any rest, because the brain is actually just as busy when you're sleeping as it is when we're awake. In fact, sometimes it's even more busy. And
But I think it has to process because we have this. We have our short-term memory and our retrieval and the things that are happening around us. But everything that we touch, taste, see, smell, hear, it's all going in there.
Yeah.
And the brain is recording it somewhere, but all of that information would be too much to process. So our conscious mind is like a filter. But the brain still has to do something with all of that information. And I think that's what happens when we're asleep. And the brain, it's like archiving files on a computer.
Or defragging a hard drive.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the sort of analogy that I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Yeah. Soldier says he rarely dreams, but you probably dream every night, Soldier. It's just you don't remember them, because I mean I don't remember dreaming last night, but I remember dreaming when I had a nap after my tea.
I don't generally remember my dreams. I think that's partially because of smoking the ganja, but I had a massively vivid dream on Wednesday morning, yesterday morning, and it was almost what's that? Oh, what is it called? The word slipped my mind. Anyway, but I'd woken up, fed the girls, gone back to bed, and suddenly I somehow slipped into this super deep sleep, and it felt really real. I had this really vivid dream. It was almost a lucid dream, not quite.
Yeah.
But it covered a whole bunch of different themes that I have in dreams normally. And I was very much conscious of it. Normally, I'm sure I dream, but I just don't remember them when I wake up.
Yeah.
And with that one, I really did. And I don't know why that happens. I don't know if it's because my brain has to process stuff or whatever. I mean, who knows?
It's a possibility. I remember during lockdown, I had an incredible amount of really vivid dreams.
Mm-hmm. I think that stress plays a part.
Yeah.
I think the more stressed out you are, the more stuff that your brain has to process, and the more fears and uncertainties and worries and doubts and all of that stuff. And I think that comes out in dreams, and it's almost a self-protection mechanism.
Yeah.
And also possibly if you're super aware of your dreams, and you do what Dunne did and write them down and get into the habit of doing that and stuff, then potentially maybe the dream is your brain's way of coming up with some solutions or some ideas or some comfort or something. I don't know.
So some actual science, yeah? Scientific investigators of precognitive phenomena. Dr. Julia Mossbridge, as a visiting scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, IONS, and director of the Innovation Lab, Dr. Mossbridge represents the vanguard of consciousness research. A 2012 meta-analysis of, I'm not a great fan of meta-analysis, but there is a place for them, I suppose, of predictive anticipatory activity across 7 labs demonstrated statistically significant physiological responses to future stimuli, 1 to 10 seconds before their occurrence. This work builds upon Dunne's observations by quantifying unconscious bodily reactions preceding events, suggesting a biological substrate for precognitive perception. Mossbridge's current research explores how these micro-level presentiment effects might scale to dream state precognition over longer time frames. That's quite interesting.
It's very interesting. I mean, to me, it reinforces the notion that there is some sort of collective consciousness and that we're all part of that collective consciousness.
Yeah.
And it's It's almost like the universe is sentient in a way that we can't understand and are not supposed to understand.
Fucking
And it's
Star
trying to
Wars, isn't it?
understand it's
Star
trying to
Wars.
understand. Yeah, but
Star
it's
Wars
trying to
is
understand.
right.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe that's one of the reasons the film was so popular and why it resonated with so many people. Because this whole notion of the Force
Yeah.
is actually, science is starting to suggest that there is something like the Force.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's something like the Force, then that means there are potential for Jedi and Sith and people who can tap into it and somehow. But there are plenty of people who say that humans don't use a lot of the potential powers that we have, that these things are somehow closed off to us for whatever reason. But our brains are actually completely capable of doing things like telepathic communication and
How
all of
would
that
that work?
stuff.
How do you think that would work?
Because I think we're all connected via energy fields. It's like this idea of personal space, where you can have someone. I mean, it's like I can't stand people who hover over me when I'm working, when I'm sitting at my desk. We used to have one client who would come and stand right behind me and put his hands on my chair, and literally it's like, hello, personal space. And I would kind of shift around in my chair trying to get rid of him.
I used to use that like a the dark side influence.
Oh, you'd still be a bloody Sith.
When developers weren't quite cutting the mustard, I would do that occasionally. I would hover near the back of their chair and for a big guy, I move remarkably quietly. I keep frightening people. I mean, my wife gets frightened all the time when I appear behind her because she doesn't hear me coming. And I used to stand behind them, and you'd be working away, and I would go, and they would go, ah. I do like
it's also, you get this feeling that people are staring at you or following you, or we do have a little bit of extrasensory something going on.
It's like
I said, I just think most of us are closed off to it.
It's like when you're sitting in a restaurant or something, or on a bus or something, and you feel that somebody's looking at you, and you look up and there's somebody staring at you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, how does that work? There must be some sort of energetic connection, some sort of. I mean, but then that goes into quantum physics, where when particles are observed, they start behaving differently. And if that's happening at a quantum level, and everything's happening on the quantum level, then that would make sense that there's some sort of quantum physics going on there.
I think the problem with quantum physics is nobody understands quantum physics. And I know people say if you think you understand quantum physics, you almost certainly don't. Right?
Yeah.
but I don't think anyone understands quantum physics. And I'm not necessarily true we're even on thinking that we're even on the right path. Because, we think of atoms as like little solar systems. And there's nothing like that. They're nothing like that. Electrons are nothing like that. We don't
That's
even
just
know
how they're drawn in textbooks.
So yeah, they're drawing it like it in textbooks, and that's the problem. It gives people an impression of what they're like, but they're not like that. And electron shells and different energy levels, and making. And in fact, there's an interesting point, Ray, when you were talking about non-stick being bad for you. No, it's not. I looked into non-stick. And non-sticks, and this is relevant, right? So non-sticks PTFE, so it's a fluorine carbon bond, and it's the strongest bond there possibly is, right? And what happens with PTFE is it goes into these huge long chains, right, of carbon, fluorine, and they're all bonded together, and nothing can break it up, right? Nothing can break it up. So even if you eat PTFE, i.e. Teflon, right? It just runs through because your body can't do anything with it. It can't get into your bloodstream. It can't go anywhere. It just runs through and comes back out the other end, right? But this is the point of these bonds are so strong because when the atoms get together, the carbon and the fluorine atom share an electron. And so suddenly, instead of becoming instead of being two different atoms, they're almost one going round each other. It's not PTFE that's the problem, it's PFAS and PFOS, but that's for another different lesson at some point or whatever.
Well, I agree with what Soldier said about quantum Mandelbrot, because fractal geometry is one of the best descriptions that I've seen of the universe, life, the principles of self-similarity, and this structure that kind of repeats itself as above, so below. If you look at a phone tree and you look at the leaves on a phone tree, and you look at a river system or the roots on a tree, and I think that there might be some way using fractal geometry that you can potentially start describing some of these things.
Yeah, but that's similar as well as when you say how long's a coastline. Well, what level do you want to go down to it? Because if you eventually go down to it, the coastline's going to be infinitely long, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Which is crazy.
Absolutely.
Anyway, Dr. Dean Radin, mass testing and quantum perspectives. The chief scientist at IONS has conducted groundbreaking experiments through the Gotpsi, that's Gotpsi project, accumulating over 350 million trials from 420,000 participants since 2000. His analysis has revealed significant correlations between belief in psi and successful performance in remote viewing tests, suggesting psychological factors modulate precognitive capacity. Radin's interpretation of this phenomena through quantum entanglement metaphors provides a contemporary framework for understanding how consciousness might access non-local temporal information. It probably doesn't, but he's given it a shot. But that's quite interesting because what does that say? That's if you believe it, you can do it. We're back to fucking Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Believe in the Force.
But I mean, there's plenty of self-help books written about manifesting stuff. Buddhism talks about it as well. I mean, these are things that people have done, and if you believe in something enough and you manifest it and you give it your attention, then you can make it happen.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. It illustrates how little we actually understand about the universe. And I think one of the big problems that science has got is they think they know everything. I mean, you look at a lot of these scientists that are at the top of their fields, and they're so close-minded, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they have their box, and they think they've figured everything out. And if you come along with something that challenges their fundamental kind of beliefs, they'll shut you down and they'll cancel you, and you won't get your funding, and you'll be a pariah and all of this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. So
anyway, I think we've done a good one on that.
Yeah,
it was fun, really interesting.
Before we finish though, I think we'll mention the declassified documents reveal contemporary applications of precognitive capacities. The Pentagon's Stargate project and its successor programs, 2017 to present, utilize dream-based precognition for counter-terrorism intelligence. 2022 DARPA-funded study demonstrated 68% accuracy in dream-derived predictions of geopolitical events versus a 22% chance baseline. If that's true, that's freaking scary.
But the thing is that when it's like with the remote viewing, they wouldn't put so much time, money, and effort into these things
If it didn't work.
If it didn't work precisely.
Yeah.
And so I'd be. I mean, it kind of tracks with what we were talking about, ripples of consciousness.
Yeah.
And that somehow that's much more common, and we're filtering it out, that our brains somehow, maybe from an early age or whatever, that it's almost just like treated by the brain as noise, or the brain can't deal with the imagery, and it's all too traumatic or whatever. I don't know, that somehow the brain protects itself and keeps us in our little box. Or maybe it's also training.
So you were talking about tools earlier. Deep neural network decoders reconstruct dream imagery from functional MRI data with a 76% accuracy. So that's people sleeping in an MRI are getting their dreams decoded. That's just wild. Lucid-dream induction devices, REM dreamer, increase precognitive dream frequency by 300% in clinical trials.
Wow. So that suggests that there are devices that can actually enhance this, which would also kind of lend itself to the idea that somehow our brains are filtering this stuff out, and that somehow you can construct a device that amplifies
takes down the
it to
barrier.
point.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
or boosts the signal. Yeah, yeah, like putting a cloud lifter on a dynamic microphone, it boosts the signal. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's a possibility. Even though we don't know what we're doing, we're affecting things. So,
which is supported by what quantum physics says.
Yeah.
And it's all questions. This is the good thing about the really fun questions. Don't give you any. You don't lead to any answers. You just lead to more questions and more questions and more questions. But it's the asking of the questions that for me is the fun part.
Yeah, it's
we don't have to know everything. We don't have to understand everything.
You know what we do have to know, though? We have to know if you like us.
Well, yeah, I mean, it would be nice if people liked.
Yeah. So
click the like,
share, subscribe, hit the like button.
It would help.
Because it helps us. Helps us to keep bringing this nonsense to you.
And it also helps more people to see the nonsense and start asking some deeper questions.
Yeah. Because, you don't want people to be living in a cave, do you? You want to be educating people, and you want to bring them out themselves to achieve the best they possibly can.
And I actually think that in this day and age, that's even more important than it was in past times, because of the absolute state of the world and how many other forces there are pushing people into their boxes, because they want people in their propaganda narratives, and they want everybody thinking the same thing and acting in the same way, and everything's nice and controllable. And that's not human life. That's not what makes life worth living.
And social media isn't social, because, people are left too much on their own these days, too much to their own devices. There's too little human interaction, I think.
I think so too. And yes, absolutely. But it's also the changes that we've seen in the world have actually made human interaction more difficult. And I think that's been a deliberate intent of the people who have engineered some of the stuff that we've experienced, certainly over the last 5 years, if not way before that. But it sort of came into focus in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And there's a there seems to be people have less of an ability to actually tolerate ideas that go against what they believe. I mean, it's this notion of two strangers sitting in the pub just talking and disagreeing, and it doesn't have to be an argument. It could be you don't have to cancel someone just because you disagree with them.
Yeah.
And sometimes actually if you can listen to what they're saying, then you can sometimes learn something as well, or they can learn something from you.
People are very quick though to jump on you if you put out something that is I mean, I don't get it. People are putting stuff up on Twitter, and it's like, and we'll talk about these things tomorrow, but like, Starmer's got 2 moles in his face, and they're putting up 2 pictures, and they're going, "There's 2 Starmers and all that," and I'm like, well, there's not, because if you actually look at the pictures, the angle of the light means that you can't see one mole properly. But these people are fucking stupid. They're either stupid or they're clickbaiting, right? And I think there's a bit of both in it. But there's other things in that people going on about the Chagos Islands, right? And how Starmer sold us out. Well, the Tories started this in 2022. They put all the groundwork in. And let's face it, the only real reason Sunak didn't sign off on it is because he was heading for an election and he was unpopular enough.
Mm.
So things like that. But to then jump on you because you've pointed out a truth, I don't get that. I don't get that. I don't understand. Why jump on me when I point out a truth? Because it doesn't fit your world narrative? Well, then maybe your world narrative is too fucking tight and you really need to expand your horizons.
It's called the anonymous internet arsehole syndrome.
Well, yeah, it is, mate. And I every time it happens to me, I just hear the voice in my head, and it's in your voice, and it says, "I just block the bastards." So, thank you for that. I take your advice and I do that. So, if you enjoyed this, God knows why, but there'll be more tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
Oh, we got a big show tomorrow. Yeah.
Because tomorrow's
bring
all
extra
in.
Snacks.
And you thought this was wild. Tomorrow's just going to be... It's just going to... There's so much crap to wade through these days.
It's crazy. And I mean, yeah, and I had last week off as well, so I've got double catharsis coming.
It'll be a good one. It will be a good one. And this has been
definitely,
because that's been great for you.